Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and now that Marvel's Echo series has had some time to breathe, we're asking the question, did Marvel bury Echo? Did it bury this show and do it a disservice with this release strategy of all episodes at once at the beginning of the year? Because Marvel Studios, Disney knows better than anyone how effective it is to do a week-by-week release strategy and how much that continues to build the momentum around a show's media buzz. So knowing what they know, did they intentionally bury the show? Did they over-meddle with Echo and take away what was so good about it from just a creative standpoint to try to force it into a round peg by having too many, MCU tie-ins of like Kingpin, of Madripoor, of Daredevil, when this really could have just been Marvel Studios Unforgiven, Marvel Studios, A History of Violence. We're going to talk about it in this episode. And Marvel Studios, you're on watch, because if you don't release any other title that has Marvel Spotlight, we're going to know what you did with this show. This is the sneak peek where we take the temperature of whatever we are watching while we look ahead to the next week in Nerddom. Jessica is getting some well-earned rest as she broke down every single episode of Echo and did an amazing job. I learned so much just from watching her breakdowns. Joining me this episode, all the way from Kingpin's homeland of the state of New York, it's Tommy Bechtold.
Yes, just a short 7-hour drive from the Big Apple. In beautiful Rochester, New York, we're getting excited about the Buffalo Bills, Eric. So apologies to your Jaguars. You did vanquish us during the regular season. Oh, God, they're stopping watching. The views are going down. Marvel, Star Wars, Marvel.
Hey, we're getting some other views coming in. I mean, look, all the Tennessee Titans fans, you guys have ruined so many of our seasons. Yeah. Titans? Yeah. God, why did you even have to? I hate the Titans. I hate them.
Bills fans, Jags fans, hating the Tennessee Titans. That's what we can do.
And at the very end of this video, I'm going to share my ranking of every MCU title since Avengers Endgame. I personally just don't feel like it's fair to compare the current Marvel titles to everything that came before Endgame. I think at some point I will share my master ranking of everything.
Can we do that in tuxedos? At like a theater, and we'll reveal the list like an award show.
The reason why I'm reluctant to do it is it keeps changing, and
sure.
Kevin Feige keeps bringing in the Marvel Netflix shows and the X-Men continuity, and eventually we're just gonna have to rank over 100 titles.
Eric, are you saying that you're allowing yourself to evolve and change in your opinions on art? I don't know about that. I think you should be steadfast and stubborn.
Oh my God, you're right, Tommy.
Lock them in. Lock him up!
Hey, I'm going to get into a pitch in this discussion that Roxxon could have been a more effective villain of this series than Kingpin was. But before we even get to that, I want to make something clear at the top of this discussion. Tommy and I both independently really loved a lot about this Echo series, and we join everyone who feels seen in this show. Maybe we don't have that same kind of life experience, but we celebrate the fact that this character exists in the MCU, and we love what Alaqua Cox did with the character. We love what the writers did with this character. Everyone who consulted on this show, they did so many things really well, and this is such an important show, and we're going to get critical on it, but our criticisms are not directed at the fact that they have this character in the MCU. I know there's a lot of people online who are criticizing this show for just unfair reasons, and that's not what we're doing here. We're looking at what the studio did and the way that they released it and the way that they produced it, and I think it's very clear that they changed things about this show, from reducing storylines to adding things that didn't need to be in the show, especially in the first episode. And we're just going to talk about Marvel Studios as a whole. I think it's a fair question to ask. Did they bury this show? Did they bury what was good about it? And did they bury what could have been great about it existing in the MCU? And I think that's a fair conversation to have. I don't think that makes us haters. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, both internally at Marvel Studios and within the nerd sphere where Tommy and I are part of it.
Sure. Well, Eric, I'm going to commit a cardinal sin number 2 and make another sports comparison, but I think it is pertinent to this. When you're a world class level figure skater or gymnast or something that requires a complicated, complex routine with multiple different elements, and you do every element at a high level, at a elite level, when you make a mistake, it is glaring. So I feel like for Echo, for me, it was a really well skated Olympic figure skating performance that the skater slipped and fell a couple times, and because the rest of it was so beautiful and well done. The moments that fell flatter than they might have had it just been, someone skating around a pond or something like that. I think they nailed so much of it that it made the parts that didn't ring true or felt tacked on or re-edited or recut, especially glaring to me.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I'll extend that comparison. I think it took an Olympic class skater and instead said, hey, could you run the decathlon?
Right.
Or could you actually be a swimmer now?
Right.
Or could you actually do your figure skating on sand instead of on ice? Yeah. Like, it started to make a show that was clearly great at one thing, try to pivot and do these other things. Unfortunately for the show, like the character Echo, it felt like this show had to live in multiple worlds. And that, we completely understand, is a different burden on Echo than it is on even like a show like Hawkeye. It's completely unfair. They are fighting uphill in so many ways on this show. And I think Marvel Studios just put these weird roadblocks in place because they just lost confidence in this show and they didn't need to. And this is a difficult thing. When you look at the pitch, the premise of this show, there is a great show here. It is a great idea to take a character who is an assassin from the big city criminal underworld working under a kingpin who decides to leave that life, who breaks free of that life, go to their hometown, and then try to find peace, but get dragged back into the violence. That is a classic Western story that always works. A History of Violence. Mm-hmm. Such an amazing show that was based on, literary source material. A title like Unforgiven, mm-hmm. Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. It's one of the best Westerns that deconstructs the Western mythology. Same kind of thing. Lone gunslinger tried to leave the violence behind them, gets dragged back into it, and scares the hell out of everyone still part of that game. Mm-hmm. Logan, if you would look at the Marvel world, Logan is basically Marvel's version of Unforgiven, a lone wolf and cub story where Logan wants to just be a limo driver and get away from that life and just gets dragged back into it and has to kind of, make some personal sacrifices and get his hands bloody again, and how painful that is. So that should have been the case for Maya Lopez. While I was watching this show, I was reminded of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, one of the best characters on TV, Mike Ehrmantraut. Started as just like a side character on Breaking Bad, but they filled out his story on Better Call Saul. He's a character who is a Philly cop who was involved in corrupt police vengeance seeking. And that's basically what he did. He got vengeance for his son who got caught up in some corrupt cops and then did some shit and then fled out west to New Mexico and tried to just have a stable life. But then due to his nature, gets dragged back into it and has to deal face to face with like various drug cartels and drug kingpins in the Better Call Saul Breaking Bad universe. And that's what this show could have been. But I feel like there was a disagreement between Sidney Freeland and Brad Winderbaum about what Maya Lopez needed to be in the MCU. And they constructed what I felt was an inauthentic relationship between Wilson Fisk and Maya Lopez. Maya Lopez has a relationship with Wilson Fisk in the comics, but they settled that in Hawkeye. And then after she shoots him, that relationship should have been done and in her past. But basically, the latter 2 episodes of this season just made her retread through that. And we never really learned much. I was far more interested about Maya Lopez's relationship with her mother, her deceased mother, her grandmother, with Chula, with Biscuits. With Bonnie, her sister, with Henry.
How did they not name Biscuits' dog Gravy? The dog's name should have been Gravy. I mentioned that yesterday. Sawmill. I don't get it. But yeah,
I talked for a long time.
No. That's fine. I agree. For the most part, my big question is, the more involved with Kingpin, now you can argue the manipulative dynamics of like an adult figure to a child figure, but like at a certain point, Maya becomes irredeemable, right? Like it's like her translator gets murdered as tying up a loose end, and like you could say like, oh, maybe she didn't hear, but she knew that lady was getting killed. Like it's like she saw a lot of innocent people die. So like at a certain point, I guess maybe not so much in comic book movies or huge like block. Like I guess when it's like a franchise, it's like everyone's redeemable because you want to be able to bring them back. But I felt like the deeper they went into, like I enjoyed the performances between Vincent D'Onofrio and Alaqua Cox. But I agree there was really no need for him to be the big bad. And in a way, because they shoehorned him in as the big bad, it was very unsatisfying at the end. I mean, I left that last episode being kind of, it felt to me like they just packed up the set. Like it was like there's still two vans full of guys with guns that just had their roofs pushed in a little bit. Like those guys are all alive and still armed. Like where were they? Why didn't they get involved?
Yeah, a lot of this was going to be a 6-episode season. Yeah. They reduced it down to 5. And just from episode 1, we knew something was going on because they clearly pitched this show as a Marvel Spotlight series. And what did they do in episode 1? They basically spent 15 minutes doing it previously on.
Yeah.
Like that, is that what makes a Spotlight?
Right.
If it's just like now super connected to what we already saw in Hawkeye, we didn't need that. Like you could have just done previously on the MCU. There were Disney Plus gives you the option to skip it if you don't need it, and just go right into her going. Like I think the issue is Jessica pointed this out in her breakdown of episode 3 and episode 4, where it looked like Kingpin was even on a green screen, just the way that scene was lit, where he first appears in front of the house. And to me, that even reflects the way I feel about his role in the show. And I say this as someone who loves D'Onofrio. I love Kingpin, and I'm excited to see where he's going in the MCU. This was not his story. This was Echo's story. And what they did, in effect, an argument could be made, is that they treated this as like a Dances with Wolves with Kingpin, where he goes out to tribal country, to the Choctaw Nation, heals his generational trauma, and then gets to go back and run for mayor feeling empowered. Yeah. Because he basically goes on this spiritual quest. And that's bullshit. Yeah. That's obviously not what the writers wanted from this show.
Well, right,
but by
exactly.
putting Kingpin in this, you empower him to be like a protagonist figure. Right. And that's not what should have happened with the series.
No. Especially given the fact that we already know that he did want to kill her father. Like, that he is, it's not like there's going to be a moment where you're like, oh, I'll be convinced maybe Kingpin could win me over. It's like, I don't know. I just, I agree. So much of it, I found enjoy the performances of the side characters were truly, I mean, we get Graham Greene, who's just been in everything and was amazing as Scully. And then you get the guy who played Uncle Henry was fabulous, I thought, and like interesting and kind of like a little bit. He reminded me a little bit of like a martial arts action star in the 90s and 80s because he had great facial, exaggerated facial reactions, which is kind of like a no-no in like traditional acting school. But I think that guy and in that performance, it totally worked. Like him being very expressive kind of played along to the guy, a man who lives a double life as a import-export person and a roller rink owner. Like that guy's going to be quirky. Yeah. That's two worlds merging together as well. So
I'm just not that interested in Maya's and Wilson Fisk's relationship going forward. And I think one issue is by making Kingpin the big bad of this show, you're forcing someone into this town, this amazing community, fascinating community of Tamaha, a community that Wilson Fisk has no relationship with other than to Maya.
Right.
And like we saw a Roxxon gas station. How much of an actual history do we have in this country of oil companies plundering this land and stealing this land? Why can't you just make a Roxxon oil conglomerate and then put some big bad from the comics in charge of that, but someone who is like Killers of the Flower Moon stealing this land from indigenous peoples and then basically plundering it for its wealth? I mean, if you want to get MCU about it, you could even have like Val or someone find some kind of like enchanted quality about the land and mine it for quantum or whatever you want to do. But as someone who has like a relationship that is more tied in with the themes of Tamaha, of Chula, of Scully, and with Maya, but instead they just relied on this kind of structured backstory where Maya as a girl saw Wilson Fisk beating to death an ice cream vendor and getting activated by that. And like, if this is supposed to be the same Kingpin from the Netflix shows, you mean to tell me the whole time that we saw him dealing with Vanessa, with Rabbit in a Snowstorm, with everything, he had this niece on the side that like is now so important to him? Like I think, and again, Sidney Freeland, the writers of the show, obviously had a goal in mind with this show, but by forcing it to be something that it did not need to be, Marvel Studios is trying to figure out a way to sell it more, but at the same time, they dumped it all at one time, and now no one is talking about the show. No one is watching it. And instead, you're delivering a piece of content that feels false, that feels like it's been meddled with, that feels like it's been tainted to people who are going to love it. And they have to kind of defend it on two different fronts.
Right.
And that's just not fair, I think,
Yeah.
to the people who were waiting for this show
Yeah.
and could have had a really great, simple, pure thing that was just telling the story of Maya Lopez and her family. I mean, I'm going on a tear right now. I say this as one who loved the prologue of the show. I love the history of the Choctaw Nation, of her ancestors. I thought that was so cool. Like the clay texture of everything. Like that was interesting to me. But it just felt like a completely different show than what was sold to us through trailers. And it just feels like you're doing it at a disservice if you just don't sell it for what it's going to be and how cool it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree.
I know it sounds biased because I'm a creator, but being creative is kind of the best. Like being able to have an idea in your head and then have it take form in the world is super satisfying. And it's easier to do it when you're using Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives. It's got thousands of classes led by professionals from basically every creative industry, from film to fine arts and every creative niche, from claymation to composition. Whether you're looking for a new hobby or ready to turn your hobby into a side hustle, Skillshare can help. They've designed specialized learning paths just for you when you are on your creative quest. Every learning path has handpicked classes meant to be taken in order that build on another, reinforcing the lessons of the previous classes and letting you learn at your own pace. Want to start your own YouTube channel? Skillshare has learning paths just for that. It's got over 10 hours of classes. I checked out some because why not? And the classes on how to be on camera is super useful because I am not actually good at being on camera. It's crazy how much of this stuff that feels like there's nothing to it actually has a lot to it. No matter what you want to learn, drawing, editing, design, there's a learning path just for you. Even if you want to learn one particular tool to help you professionally like Procreate or Blender, Skillshare's got you covered. The first 500 people to use the link in the description to sign up will get 1 month free trial of Skillshare. So start your year off right with Skillshare.
It's hard, and I understand it. It sounds like I'm being really negative.
No, I think you're very much handling it. It's tough for us to sit here as two straight white guys and like get technical about a show that is being assailed and attacked for completely irrational, untechnical points by smooth-brained idiots on the internet. So it's like, if we want to argue the merits of the storytelling and the cohesiveness and the whole product, that's something that you and I and hopefully fans of New Rockstars can enjoy and do. Unfortunately, like trying to have that discourse with someone on the internet who just is like MCU or Marvel woke or whatever is like, it's not going to work out. And they're never, I mean, the sad thing for them is they'll never get to enjoy the stuff that really sails and takes off. And, you know, and I feel bad for them, but it also puts us in a predicament because it's like, yeah, I don't really want to rail on this show that I think was pretty flawed because I feel like of all the, like, with all the negativity out there that's being put on it unfairly, it's like some fair negativity just kind of adds fuel to the idiot fire. So I'm like, I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's tough. I don't think you're being inherently negative. I think you're being incredibly fair with the overall, what the product was, what the actual literal, tangible, what we saw with our own eyes product was. I think you're doing an incredibly fair analysis of it. Unfortunately, horrible internet discourse makes it very hard to thread that needle these days. So yeah. We're kind of a rock and a hard place.
It's tough. I honestly, you know, we get criticized a lot on New Rockstars of like being shills or being like woke about stuff. I don't even know what woke means.
Yeah.
And I used to think that like the, you know, certain forces in this company who love to use that term, in this country who love to use that term don't know what it means. I now believe that they have in their mind a shared understanding of what woke means. I do not know, and I feel like the only way we're going to fix things is I have to kind of know what they mean by woke.
My understanding is that the traditional, the origin of the word woke was stay aware of your surroundings and stay present for your own safety, and that dealt with marginalized communities and people that were, you know, facing racism, sexism, whatever, any bigotry of all forms. Staying woke meant be like keep your head on a swivel and be aware of people that may be out to hurt you. That was like the original meaning of it.
Right. I felt like I understood. I used to know what it meant, and now it just means something different.
Now it basically just means not straight white.
Right. It's code.
Yeah.
It is completely code.
Yeah.
It's for anything that people on the right in this country feel like is pushing a political agenda on them. But the problem is they keep moving the goalposts, and now anything that's just mere representation, just having Tiona Paris on a thumbnail of a video, to them is woke. And it's like, how is that woke? Just to show a person of color.
Explain to me what political agenda was accomplished in Echo. If you're telling me that show was overly politicized, I don't think there is one. I think the key message of it was,
I mean, me talking about Andor, just the fact that a character's political diatribe has roots in the Communist Manifesto, acknowledging the existence of the Communist Manifesto is woke. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? This is just a historical document that inspired a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. Like, what are you talking about?
I think a lot of people that will share that opinion of labeling everything woke are a little bit like Brick Tamland in Anchorman. They don't really know what they're saying. They just know that they're adults, and so if they speak, people will reactionarily listen to them. So they just say things like woke and like the country's going down the tubes and like Marvel is broken or whatever. And it just, unfortunately, it gets ears, it gets listens.
Yeah, I think it means like it's used by people who wake up every morning ready for a fight on the internet. And that's not how I begin every day, but it's folks who are expecting to be like victimized.
Well, that's good because you have a baby. I would love if
I'm dealing with a different battle.
If your baby was just laying down and you're just furiously tweeting over him.
So that Tommy and I kind of gone off on a tangent here, but it is reflecting how hard it is to talk about this show and to be critical of anything surrounding it, because I think a lot of people on the other side are committing to these talking points of only saying positive things about the show because they don't want the studio to get the wrong message and never ever make another property about this. They don't want to like step on any eggshells. Mm-hmm. They don't want to get like canceled by any other kind of faction on the internet. And I think that also does a disservice to it because because yes, this show is flawed. And the success of a TV show, when it's successful, like Loki season 2, everyone can take part in that success, from the creatives, from the writers, from the actors, from the production designers to the studio, because a TV show is a commercial product and the studio deserves credit for putting together a great creative team and successfully marketing it and branding it and all that stuff. We're not just criticizing a single painting that one artist hung up on a wall. We're criticizing something that was designed to sell products with like product placement, that kind of thing. So all that said, I just believe Marvel had a great opportunity here. And I remember being at D23 with you, Tommy, back in 2022 in Anaheim and seeing the very first teaser for that. And there was a lot of black and white footage of indigenous tribes warring against each other. And it just seemed like a very different show. And I was really intrigued to see what this show could be. And then from that to whenever that was in late 2023, where they released a trailer and it was like a season of Punisher. It just felt like Marvel got their hands on this. They didn't have confidence in it. And to me, my favorite episode of What If, and I don't mean to just like compare every other story of indigenous groups and say that they should all be the same thing. That's not what I'm saying. But the fact that Marvel allowed the creatives to just take control of the Corey episode of What If and how great of results they got out of that. They committed to it and they didn't try to alter it or change it into something that it wasn't. And that ended up being my favorite episode. For so many reasons. It just felt like such an interesting story. It was the truest sliding door, truest to the idea of and sentiment of what if should be, I felt in season 2, and I just really enjoyed it. Marvel had an opportunity to do the same with Echo, and I think they got scared. I think by dumping it all at once, they knew what they were doing. They knew that like the world would move on from it in a couple weeks, and I just think that's a shame.
And I mean, I hate to say it, but they probably knew that in like about a month, we're all going to be ragging on Madam Web's ridiculous Ocean Spray Cranberry revealed suit. And they're like, all right, well, that's technically a Marvel Studios film, I guess, right? Like, aren't they all producing conjunction? But they're like, less blood on it, less ocean spray on our hands with Madam Web. So, I mean, look.
Yeah. I mean, I say this as someone who I enjoyed, honestly, seeing Wilson Fisk in this show. I enjoyed seeing Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox. I liked these fights, but I also I didn't need them in the show to enjoy it.
I don't think they moved the story forward at all, or added any levels to the character. That I think I already had a good grasp on who Echo was prior to the. the Daredevil fight at least. I mean,
I will also say, I think one criticism I will wager toward the creatives of the show is the changing of Echo's powers. There was a comment made to Variety by Sidney Freeland early before the series came out that they decided to change Echo's powers from what they were in the comics, which is similar to Taskmaster.
Yes.
You know, Echo's known as someone who can kind of mimic any fighting move and stay like a millisecond ahead of it. Sidney Freeland said, quote, you know, we felt that was kind of lame. And then they wanted to, and she wouldn't say in the interview what her powers would be, but what they ended up settling on in the show is something similar to what we've seen in recent Marvel titles, which I think the first time we saw it, basically one's power, it begins with like a young hero who's uncertain of their powers, but then looks back through history at their matriarchal lineage, and by coming to terms with it and embracing in some kind of embrace through history, is able to empower themselves in some surprising way, and then start glowing, and then blast light, and then basically blind their enemies.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so we saw that with Ms. Marvel. We saw that effectively with Shuri in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. If you listen to the Ringerverse podcast from the Midnight Boys, Charles Holmes explains this far better than I do. Shout out to all those guys over there, where Charles kind of goes into his explanation that like Marvel keeps doing this thing of like from the dawn of time, and then just this kind of ancestral story. And what makes Marvel comics so interesting to many readers is like the idea that the power itself isn't what is sacred. The power is supposed to be kind of some incidental, accidental thing. Miles Morales gets bit by a spider that he wasn't supposed to be bit by, and then he becomes Spider-Man, and he brings his culture, his story to that role. Now, you could say Marvel Comics gave the spider story far more sacred power by saying it was an arachno frequency through the web of life and destiny. But still, the idea is that all the spiders who got bit in these respective universes, it was just kind of like a random, silly thing. Right. And each of them brought their worlds to the role. Yeah. But by saying that, like, your power comes from the fact that you were destined through your bloodline to do this, I think it can be an effective way to bring catharsis to people who feel like they should be ashamed of their story. So I think it works. But if you keep doing it again and again and again, it kind of waters down the power of it. And I think what I like about Echo Comics is that this is, I understand the writer's perspective that it could be a bit problematic, that like, oh, her disability is now like a power. Like, you know, Daredevil's idea that, oh, because he is blind, he can enhance hearing. There's something about that. I get that. But there's so many other ways that you could just make her power just something that is incidental to who she is. The power should not be like fused. I don't know. I'm saying should, but it's just like, it's tough. Like, I think if you make it so much about like she was destined to be through her ancestry to have this power, and if that power is just glowing, and we tell the actor just react to glowing on your hands and then blast glowing through your hands, it's like we just keep seeing that with Marvel, and it just doesn't really seem to have any tactile weight when they blast people. Does it zap them? Does it cut through their flesh when you blast them? They keep doing that where they like 80% of powers in the MCU are just like glowing radiation, and that's it. We don't know what it is.
I agree. And it's like, well, perhaps all of this will be rendered moot with the introduction of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, who all kind of like their names are their powers. It's like,
yeah. You know, it's funny. We're breaking down the X-Men series right now, and I talk about how like with the early aughts X-Men movies, they seem to sideline James Marsden a lot, which is a bummer because he's so good. And in my opinion, like Cyclops should be the leader of the X-Men. Like we should see the ethical choices, but they sideline him because Wolverine ended up being the bigger star, and they wanted to explore the Phoenix saga. But I think it's really just a practical thing because in the early aughts, the visual effect of the optic blast was really hard to do. Now it's a lot easier. But like with Iron Man, they figured out a new aesthetic of it. And it felt like with the first Iron Man, we knew what it looked like when Tony Stark's repulsors hit something. It seemed to have a weight. Now it's just like the Marvels are just blah, 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 just spitting light at each other. And we don't really know if it hurts.
Right.
How much it hurts. Like, does it melt metal? Does it cut flesh?
Yeah, is it like is it piping hot, or is it, icy cold, or what is it?
Like Doctor Strange just kind of blasts light at things, and it's like, should that cut them in half, or does it just like slap them?
Yeah.
Does it just push them back?
Can I eat the light? Can I snort the light? Can I, can I use the light to light my domicile? I don't know. You're right.
Yeah, this is something that the Boys does it really well when when Homelander uses his heat vision on things and then people bleed, like we're afraid when his eyes start to glow.
Right.
Like it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But the MCU, it's just like so soft.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what it means when characters start glowing.
Less light, more fight.
Just have an impact. Just
I think that's the main thing. Like, just give us an effect. Like, what does it do? Well, how does this affect that? If you're getting blasted by something, is it just overwhelming pressure or force? Is it is it like getting punched? Is it like getting stabbed? Is it like getting shot? We just need to know that.
So lessons learned, I think, Marvel Studios, if I have to applaud Disney and Marvel Studios for taking the step to even like greenlight these. But if you're going to greenlight it, you have to follow through and you just have to let the project be what the project is. And you're not going to score any points by putting Kingpin and Daredevil in it because the guys who only want to see Daredevil and Kingpin stories are not going to be fooled by coming over to you're not going to win them over that way by tricking them. Like, just be honest, be transparent about what stories you want to tell, and then let those stories breathe.
Yeah.
Let the audience find those stories. So yeah,
I'm with you.
It's a shame. It's a shame because I really loved so much about the show, and I hope we see Echo again. I hope we see some of these characters again, but I just don't think we will.
Yeah,
I don't think we will.
Yeah, that'll be it.
I mean, hey, maybe we'll see. I mean, we'll see, obviously, Kingpin again. We might see Echo show up there's 18 episodes of Daredevil Born Again. If you don't let her show up in one of those 18 episodes, it's going to be like, yikes, guys, come on. Looking ahead now.
Yes.
Heat check before we go. Because, Tommy, you and I haven't talked in a while.
Yeah.
I want to know from you, how optimistic are you about Marvel in 2024 with X-Men 97, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Eyes of Wakanda, but then also Deadpool 3 and the Darkhold Diaries?
Yeah. I'm a variety of levels of enthusiasm and hopeful. X-Men 97, I'm never betting against our boy Frank Moran. That's going to be an absolute banger. I think X-Men 97, for me, that's just going to be something I'm going to enjoy as a fan. I'll be happy to talk about it on this channel, but I just, that cartoon was such a part of my routine as a kid. So I look forward to going back into that world. Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, that I have, that's probably the project I'm the least familiar with. I think it's just an animated show about him in high school, right?
Yeah, it was originally Spider-Man freshman year.
Yes.
It's an animated series that just kind of takes Peter back to the high school.
I mean, I think these are great ways to get kids that come home after school and watch TV to get into the MCU. I mean, like a backdoor way to get them into Marvel products. Deadpool 3, I'm very excited and bullish on. I feel like as long as they don't, as long as there's not too many chefs in the kitchen now, with it being a Disney produced movie, I'm very bullish on that. Eyes of Wakanda, I think again they're just going to have to deflect morons and idiots that are going to critique it for no reason. And other than that, I'm excited about it. And the thing I'm most excited about is, of course, my sweet, sweet Agatha and the Darkhold Diaries. You gotta be kidding me! Greenlight 10 more episodes of that right now. Agatha, the whole gang, Patti LuPone, she better sing. I'll tell you that much. She better sing her little heart out. Isn't Eric Andre in Darkhold Diaries, or is that a rumor?
Oh, I remember seeing that rumor. I'm not sure.
Okay, if Eric Andre's in it, I mean, I'll watch it regardless. But it'll jump up a level for me. I love him. Yeah, I'm excited for those. You know what? I'm always going to be optimistic, even when we kind of have tough cookies like this one, and Secret Invasion certainly tested a lot of our faiths as well. It's like, I'm always going to hope. I love these movies and I love these shows. I'm going to root for them to do well, and I'm going to assume that they're going to do a good job, and then I will be here on Sneak Peek to pick up the pieces when they fall. But Eric, who cares what I think? I want to know what the Voss man thinks about these projects coming up. Give me your heat check.
I feel like I've been talking so
That's all right.
much
Rapid
in this
fire it,
episode.
baby. X-Men 97.
Yeah, X-Men 97, 10 out of 10 excited for it. Could not be more excited. Not just because Frank Moran is writing for it. I think that's going to be great. I got to say, What If Season 2 I thought was a little mixed, so I'm not really sure whether Marvel Animation is where it needs to be right now. It's specifically because of the art direction that Marvel Studios has enforced on these shows, where they have to look like, you know, the MCU live action version of it. It limits how crazy animation can get. And with animation, I want to see the variety. I don't want to see a character who looks like Sebastian Stan. I want to see someone who just looks like a crazy silhouette and go crazy with it. Anyway, so Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Eyes of Wakanda. I'll wait till I see a trailer. I saw the concept art whenever they did that panel like a year and a half ago, and I'm just like, all right. Deadpool 3 and Agatha Darkle Diaries, also 10 out of 10. I think Deadpool 3 is going to be super crazy. And I don't get it how people are like, Agatha didn't need a spinoff. It's like, if any character from MCU Phase 4 deserved a spinoff, it was Agatha.
And also,
like,
I think the nature of fandom, online fandom on social media specifically, is let something go a long enough time without it coming out, and people will invent ways to criticize it before it comes out. Like, if something doesn't get released within like 6 months of it being announced, it's like, oh, well, now we get to just speculate. And, you know, it's like, it's not anything different than people who have to go on news channels or sports networks and give a new take every day. Like, there's inevitably going to be people that were like, Agatha is everything. Agatha is mother, that like are now probably tweeting out like, oh great, another spinoff for a useless side character. So, you know, I think we're in a real heavy take zone these days. Everyone's got to have a take. So, but I'm excited, baby. I'm excited. Yeah.
As promised at the beginning of this episode, I told you I'd give you my ranking of all MCU titles since Endgame, and here it is. This is just mine, not Tommy's, and this is subject to change. This is how I'm feeling right now. I last shared this when I reviewed the Marvels, so I believe Echo is like right above Thor: Love and Thunder. I like She-Hulk just a little bit more. And just to kind of go every title beneath this, easy win over Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion remains the worst thing I think Marvel Studios has ever done. And again, this is just a list of things since Endgame. But I believe Black Widow just had even more issues of like lack of clarity of what that movie was supposed to be to whom. It was supposed to be Black Widow, but it was more of Yelena Belova. Anyway, I just had issues with Black Widow. Eternals, I get that there are Eternals defenders. I hear you. I respect you. I think that movie was a huge misfire, and the actors had no chemistry with each other and was just not fun to watch. I think the Falcon Winter Soldier started off promising, but with the character of John Walker was just such a confusing pivot for the character, in the way that series ended. The fact that they took out the Mama Danya Flag Smasher storyline, I had no idea what was going on. Thor: Love and Thunder, obviously Taika Waititi gave up on that movie, and I will always rank a title where the showrunner or director still believes in it over one where the director clearly stopped believing in it. I mean, I know people had issues with She-Hulk. I love the meta ending of She-Hulk. It ended in such a fun place. I think Echo is just, the way it ended was just such, it's just kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
So that's why I've ranked it the way
I love any show that ends on a campaign launch, personally. Any show that answers the question, is he running?
Onward. Tommy, this was a difficult conversation to have. Jessica is taking some time off right now. It's been her birthday week. She worked really hard on all those echoes. I would have loved to have her here, but we're going to continue talking this with Jessica, because I could hear Jessica from wherever she is just screaming at us like, you guys are missing this. So I understand it. And Jessica, I'm sorry.
I'm so glad we got to talk, Eric. I think, I know you're hard on yourself about being fair, but I think that you're genuinely trying to come from a good place, often in a place that goes, often a notion that goes unrewarded by toxic fandom. So I applaud you for.
Well, and Tommy, I appreciate you giving me that patience and that understanding, and I really loved hearing from you and all your thoughts about this. And you've also just been very fair as someone who can express their gratitude and their appreciation of stuff while also understanding that things are flawed and that not every project works as well as it wanted to.
Absolutely.
I love you, Tommy.
Love you too, Eric.
It was great to catch up with you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And to everyone.
Give the family a hug from me.
Everyone in the comments below, be civil with each other. Obviously, this is a difficult thing to talk about either way. But I really enjoyed watching this show overall. I enjoyed chatting about it with you, Tommy. Follow Tommy at Tommy Bechtold. You can follow me at EA Voss. Grab some merch from nerdriot.shop to support new Rockstars. It's the best way you can support us. We appreciate all you guys. We love you guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye everybody.